Hi, and thank you so much for watching my video about mental health in the tech industry. So today I am going to discuss my dataset and research question with you. Then I'm going to move on to my machine learning modeling techniques. And finally, I'm going to end with some important takeaways and potential next steps. So the dataset. The data comes from a Kaggle dataset from 2014. It was a mental health survey that asked a variety of questions about mental health and the workplace. For example, they asked the survey respondents to disclose how many employees their company has. And they also asked if they have care options, what kind of care options they have, and if they have access to wellness programs at their office. This data set was fairly clean. I started with 26 features and about 1,200 rows. I ended up with the same number of rows after cleaning, and I decided to drop 3 features. Those features were dropped mainly because they had a significant amount of missing data. That missing data could have been imputed as missing, and I decided to drop those just for simplicity, but that is an option for further research to see if that affects the model. So the question, I wanted to understand whether we can predict if a participant has sought treatment for a mental health condition based on the survey responses related to mental health and the workplace or the work environment. I think this is interesting because the tech industry places an importance on mental health that other industries, more traditional industries, maybe have not. But it is also a highly technical, competitive, and elite industry that seems to have a tension with the importance of mental health. So I wanted to understand the balance between those two things and to see if I might be able to create a model that would predict whether or not someone is likely to seek treatment. And if they aren't, maybe it can help us identify people who need a little bit of an extra push. Maybe this would be useful in the mental health care industry that works closely with in tech. Perhaps mental health care professionals in Silicon Valley would be interested in something like this, or companies to understand what things are important to going into helping their employees seek treatment and encouraging that kind of healthy behavior. So in order to answer this question, I decided to explore classification models using F1 and ROC scores as metrics, which I will get into in this next slide. So I decided to choose F1 as a metric because it balances precision and recall for binary classification, which I feel is appropriate in this case because I don't wish to prioritize precision or recall. I think that they're both important in this problem. I decided to use ROC as a companion metric to F1 because it captures the interaction between the true positive rate and the false positive rate, which I think is an interesting metric, especially in addition to F1. After picking those metrics, I conducted a random CV search to identify candidate models from a variety of common classifiers, such as k-means, SVC, random forest classifier, logistic regression, etc. The candidates that came out on top were SVC, random forest classifier, and ridge classifier. So after identifying those 3 top candidate models, I went on to tune the hyperparameters for each of those using another random search cross-validation and using cross-validation to find the mean F1 and ROC scores for each of those tuned models. Those scores were close, but ultimately, as you can see, the ridge classifier beat out the other two with an F1 of 0.86 and an ROC of 0.88. So after picking the top candidate model, I decided to study the permutation importance of that model just to get a sense for which features were most important to that model. And those came out to be family history, coworkers, and whether or not someone is able to work remotely 50% or more of the time. Now, it is very important to note that permutation importance does not provide a measure of importance in general or overall. It is a measure of the importance to this model. So it is model specific, and this might change depending on what kind of model we are implementing. And that is important for further research in this area would be to fit different models and find different permutation importances and perhaps balance those to see what features are important across models. But I still think that this is telling, and of course, family history certainly makes sense as something that would be important for someone's likelihood to reach out for help. So the amount of coworkers also would make a little bit of sense. And as we all know, remote work can affect your mental health. So that makes sense there as well. But again, like I said, this is not the end all be all, and it's just kind of a way to get some ideas out there and can be a little bit of a guiding force for those. So takeaways and next steps from this. So as you can see on the right here, this is the final F1 and ROC scores for the test data from our ridge regression model. And those are still pretty high. They're a little bit lower, but that makes sense. A little bit lower than our train and validation data, but that does make sense. And it suggests that prediction is absolutely possible, and it certainly can do better than random guessing, which is hopeful in that it is possible to, ask a survey on someone's access to mental health resources and what their work environment is like, and then maybe understand whether or not they would be likely to seek help or not. And those factors can be adjusted or changed by companies or by healthcare professionals, depending on which factors we're discussing, to encourage someone to seek treatment. Further modeling and feature importance testing is absolutely necessary. And I think there's a lot of different areas that could be done. Like we were saying, feature importance would be an important one to do a lot more testing on. And then research into company size, location, the ability to work remotely is something else that should be thought about both by companies, individuals, and mental health professionals. So thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.